When the Romans conquered Egypt, they wanted to crush the Egyptian population.
Hey, my name is Joe. I have bachelor's degrees in archaeology and classics, and I minored in history. I am not a professional or practicing archaeologist. I just like to use my degrees when I can and talk on social media. My issue is that I've seen the videos of him online quite a bit recently, especially on TikTok. They don't always align with what I've been taught, the classical world, the Roman world, the Mediterranean world. And so I thought I'd give a little bit of insight into what I know. And again, I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong. I could be a little factually off. I will put the sources that I use in my video either at the end of this video or down in the comments, whichever I remember to do, but they will be there. So I know that this video did not start at the start, that this has been cut from a longer video. I tried finding the longer video on YouTube, but couldn't find it. So I'm just going with what I have at face value. I don't know the exact context, but I am going to talk about what I saw in the video that I don't necessarily agree with. So right at the beginning of this video, Dr. Casagranda talks about how the Romans wanted to crush the Egyptian population, and I don't know what specific time period he's talking about, just because it wasn't anywhere in the video. He only states one specific date, and so it's hard. He could be talking much later, like the later Roman Empire, once they've split, or early on towards the beginning of when Rome took over. I'll talk more about the earlier time, just because I think that's kind of when he's talking about, but I could be very wrong about that. All right. Rome did what most other conquering civilizations didn't do, and they actually allowed their provinces to continue to operate almost autonomously. They still had Roman law, they still had Roman rule, they still had to follow and pay tribute and pay taxes to Rome, but they were still allowed to worship their own gods, have their own societies. They still were able to be citizens of that civilization that they were a part of before Rome came in. For the most part, it didn't always happen, but for the most part, it did, and Egypt was really no exception to that. So the idea that the Romans came in and crushed the Egyptian population isn't entirely accurate. Of course, there was Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and they rose an army and they fought against Octavian, or his name Augustus, as he became when he became the emperor. And many free Egyptian men would go on to become Roman citizens once Egypt became a part of the Roman Empire. So no, there was no true end or annihilation of the Egyptian population by the Romans. It didn't happen.
They banned Egyptians from owning land. They banned Egyptians from riding horses. They banned Egyptians from doing anything but wearing the color blue.
As far as Egyptians not being allowed to own land, that's not accurate. Egyptians, free Egyptians, those who would become Roman citizens, they were allowed to own land. They paid their taxes. Augustus actually auctioned off some parts of the royal land, the Ptolemaic pharaonic land, that he did not want anymore, or that he didn't think that the empire needed to personally own. And by empire, I mean him as future emperor of Rome. There was the concept between private land and public land, and I will put in a chunk of an article that I was reading just to show you where I'm getting my information from. And you can see that they did pay taxes. They paid taxes for their living. They paid taxes for their land. They did own land. It was not anything like this gentleman is saying. The first clip talks about public property becoming private property, and the second clip talks more about private land ownership and the ties or taxes that they had to pay back to Rome. He also goes on to say that the Egyptians were only allowed to wear blue and were not allowed to ride horses. I could not find that information anywhere in anything that I read. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's just I couldn't find it, and I looked online for this particular video to see where his sources were cited. I saw some other videos on YouTube and was not able to find any information about this particular video or any sources that he cited from any of his other videos. So I'm assuming that he did not cite sources on this video either. Meaning that information isn't there. It just means that in all the sources that I looked at, including Wikipedia, which is a fairly good source for like a conglomeration of information, It's just not there. There's no sources that he cites that I can go to and say, oh yeah, okay, this is where he's getting that information from, and then I can refute that. I can't refute it because I can't find it. So make of that what you will.
Egyptians kept rebelling, so the Romans kept massacring them by mass crucifixions.
The first is the Alexandria riots in 66 CE, which happened right at the same time as the First Jewish-Roman War. And then in 215 CE, again in Alexandria, the citizens were said to have been making fun of and mocking Emperor Caracalla. So Emperor Caracalla ordered Roman soldiers to go round up all the young men of military age and have them killed. And maybe he wasn't talking specifically about massacres, but when you use that word, it's a pretty narrow path that you have. And so these were the two that I could find. Again, without sources, I can't say that he was talking about anything else. He doesn't really give examples. He just says the Romans crucified a ton of Egyptians, and then he moves on.
So if we decide that Egyptian civilization stopped abruptly in 31 BC, I'm happy to do that for purposes of this conversation.
Egyptian civilization didn't end in 31 BCE, just like Greek civilization didn't end when Rome took them over. There was an integration of cultures and ideas and people that became this melting pot of what would be the Roman Empire. That's how it worked. They didn't just end. The Egyptian people didn't just cease to exist. Their culture didn't just stop. And at the end of the day, this gentleman seems very knowledgeable. I've just seen a few videos where I just don't necessarily agree with some of the things that he's saying. I think it's a little too out there, this video being one of the worst ones that I've seen. But that doesn't mean that he's wrong. I think we just need to look at it with a more critical lens. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said at the beginning, I will put my sources either at the end of this video or down in the comments. All right, bye.